Okay, so next we're going to look at an experiment done by a man called Francisco Redi. And his observation was that flies swarm around meat that was left in the open and that maggots appear on the meat. Now, the thought at the time by many people was that the maggots somehow just spontaneously appeared on the meat. And that's called spontaneous generation. And it was the idea that life can arise from non-life. And Francisco Redi didn't really agree. So he said, his question was, where do the maggots in the meat really come from? And he thought that maybe they were coming from the flies that he would see around the meat. Now this is during the 1600s, so obviously there wasn't good refrigeration, so observations of rotting meat was probably a little more common. So his prediction, so his hypothesis was flies are producing the maggots. And so his prediction was, if that's correct, that flies are producing the maggots, then if he keeps the flies away from the meat, then he won't see any maggots. So and he couldn't just keep the flies away from the meat. He needs to have a control group and a variable group. Okay, so this is his control group over here. So he got two identical pieces of meat because he doesn't want any other variables, and two identical jars, and he puts the meat in the jar. Now his control group, he leaves the meat as if it would normally be left. So the jar is uncovered, it's exposed for several days, and flies actually swarm. For his variable group, now they're calling it experimental situation. This is the same thing as the variable group. So in this one, he covered it with gauze. Now, he actually did an original experiment where he covered it with something akin to like plastic wrap. Obviously, it wasn't plastic wrap, but something similar. And he didn't get maggots, but the people that believed in spontaneous generation said, well, that's because the air isn't reaching the meat, and somehow you need to have air for the maggots to appear spontaneously. So his idea then was to put some gauze. Okay, so gauze was going to let the air in, but not the flies. Okay, so that's hopefully his only variable. The only difference between this jar and this jar is that this one has gauze over the top. And so he left it covered for several days, just like the control group. And so he got results that said that no maggots appeared. Okay, so remember for the control group over here, the flies swarmed and the maggots appeared. Over here on the the variable group, the flies were not able to get to the meat and no maggots appeared. So his hypothesis was supported. So his conclusion then was that the experiment supports the hypothesis that the flies are the source of the maggots and that spontaneous generation of maggots does not occur. All right.